Let's get the program started. We are here today to hear from Juan Padres for Supervisor in District 3. My name is Larry Bodine. I'm the president of Democrats of Greater Tucson, and I welcome everyone here. So let me tell you about Juan. So Juan Francisco Padres is a native of Nogales, and he came to Tucson in 1999 to go to the U of A. Currently, Juan is an entrepreneur and a small business owner. He runs a trucking company that specializes in hotshot services between Tucson and Mexico. He's really active in the local community. Just to cite three of many examples, he's the president of the nonprofit Tucson, Mexico Sister Cities Association. He's a commissioner on the Pima County Small Business Commission, and he served as the Pima County Workforce Investment Board. He served on that. And that's just a few of them. So with that, I want to say thank you so much to all you DGT members. And Juan, please tell us about yourself and why we should vote for you.
Of course. Thank you very much, Larry. It's a pleasure to be here on this beautiful day. I wish I could be in person there to see you all and say hello. But, here we are. I'm looking forward to giving you this presentation. I'm going to be using a PowerPoint. I think since we are in a computer, it's probably easiest. So let me get here, share my screen. Hold on. Larry, you need to enable
Okay.
screen sharing.
Yep, hang on just a second here. Let me do that. All right, you should see the share screen arrow down at the bottom. I just made you a co-host. There we go.
There, okay, fantastic. Hold on here.
Yeah, we want to put that on display slides.
I can't find my little arrow. Resume slideshow. Okay, so once again, thank you, and let's get the show on the road. So as Larry mentioned, I came to Tucson in 1999, but a few facts about me, just on a personal level. I'm an 8th generation Sonoran, actually. So that means my family been here in the Sonoran Desert since it was part of Spain. We have really deep roots in the desert here, multiple generations in Mexico, doing trade with Arizona, cattle, mining. So yeah, we've been here a while. I'm a 3rd generation Nogalense, born and raised, but I made my way up to Tucson in 1999 to study at the University of Arizona, where I earned my Bachelor of Arts in political science, and then later my Master's in Business Administration in 2009. I'm married for 9 years, father of 2 little girls, 4 and 2, and I have a beagle named Bruno. Other facts about my family: I have 2 older sisters. One is a 2nd grade teacher here in Tucson at Roberts and Eller. And the other one is an 8th grade teacher down in Nogales in the Nogales Unified School District. I'm fortunate to have both my parents still alive. My dad's 81, my mom's 72. They both live in Nogales, Arizona. They have been married for 53 years. This is a picture of me and my wife and my little girls, and that's Bruno. He's my firstborn and His Majesty. Just wanted to share that with you guys. So a little bit about my work experience, qualifications. So I started off as an entrepreneur, as an insurance and financial services agent with Farmers Insurance Group. I had my own agency under JP Insurance. While doing that, it was good times. I was fortunate enough to open up a restaurant and a bar, and those are the logos of my restaurant and bar. It was Chile Verde, a taco joint, which I don't know if any of you ever made it there. It was on Stone and Congress, where Nook is currently right now. We were a little early in the downtown taking off. We were betting on that, but things happened. The recession got in the way, and we closed shop in 2010. And Central was the bar at night. We would transform the restaurant into a bar. It was actually very popular at the time. Afterwards, I worked for Wells Fargo, a home mortgage, as a loss mitigation specialist, which means I did loan modifications for closures. At the time, it was very painful to do that, and I didn't like it whatsoever. So I jumped over to JP Morgan Chase, where I was a quality assurance manager for a couple of years. Very interesting work, very fun actually. Most people think compliance is boring, but quite interesting. But I missed Tucson. I really did. This was all in Phoenix, the Wells and JP Morgan. So I looked for a job back here in Tucson, and the city opened its arms for me in 2013, and I came to work for the city of Tucson as an economic development and international trade specialist, where I was there for 6 years, 3 different city managers, mostly under Mayor Rothschild at the time, and some of the council members are still there. That, I think, opened up the appetite for public office. Now, afterwards, I left the city and worked for 1 year with TuSimple, which is an artificial intelligence company. They do autonomous trucking, and I was the public affairs and business development manager. And I recently left TuSimple to focus on the campaign and on my current business, which currently, as Lori mentioned, I am running a small trucking company. We move freight back and forth between Mexico and Tucson, mostly for products for the maquiladora industry, for assembly. And what's meant by hotshot, it means it's urgent. So they call us, and this needs to be down in Guaymas today, and we do that. We also do local courier. So if something, pallets need to be delivered to FedEx or to even some of the manufacturers here, we do that. I also import and distribute craft beer from Mexico. I'm a beer fan, and the craft beer scene is taking off in Mexico right now. Obviously, it started here in the U.S. very heavily, so there were no Mexican craft brews. So we decided to import them and distribute, and we're in about 30 locations here in town. Unfortunately, right now with the current situation, sales are very slow. We're as long as restaurants are closed and bars, we really have a hard time moving product. So that's on hiatus for now. But hopefully, we hope to resume this later this summer, back to that, importing and selling beer. And lastly, I'm also president of the nonprofit Tucson, Mexico Sister Cities. It's a great group where we specialize. We have 4 different sister cities in Mexico, and the base of the group, the mission is economic, humanitarian, educational, and cultural ties. It's very rewarding, very interesting work. I guess I can tell you about that one at another time, but that's kind of in a nutshell what I'm currently doing. That picture is me in obviously one of my trucks. So the big question, why am I running for office? Well, as I mentioned, I think being at the city of Tucson was, it got me thinking. I worked in economic development. I worked there for 6 years. I was involved in multiple projects for just a ton of stuff, especially on the economic development side, of course. And I think it came out of frustration to an extent, that you see all this potential, and sometimes things don't get done. A lot of projects aren't really presented or given importance. And I think being there, I said, I think a lot of people who run for office, like, maybe I could do it better. And working with the city, I had the opportunity to work with the county hand in hand, and I identified where I wanted to focus, and a county supervisor seat is what caught my eye, and see, I think there's a lot of good to be done there. But like to start also, I think this slide says a lot about why I'm running too. And this is Albert Einstein's quote: "Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results." And I think that's one of the issues that Pima County has, is we keep electing the same people over and over, decade after decade after decade, and expect different results. So that is one of the issues I identified with, why things, the frustration of why some things don't necessarily happen. So let me put this in perspective. So I'm challenging Sharon Bronson, the current incumbent in District 3. Many of you know her, maybe some of you don't. She was first elected to office 24 years ago. It's almost a quarter century. That's the same year Bill Clinton defeated Bob Dole in the 1996 presidential election. I mean, a quick fact on that: most U of A undergraduate students hadn't been born when Sharon was first elected. That's a long time. That's about 40,000 undergraduate students. Just putting it in perspective. She's running for a 7th term, which would put her at 28 years in public office. And again, just in perspective of this, she's been in office in 4 different decades: the mid-1990s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and now in the 3rd decade of the 20th century, the 2020s. So that's a long time for any public official to be in office, in my opinion. And people ask me, is that enough of a reason to challenge an incumbent just because they've been there that long? Well, I think so, yes, because I do believe you get stale after like the 4th term. You lose that creativity, that mojo to go out, think outside the box, engage the community. I think that's lost once you've been there that long. But let's not. I mean, those are opinions per se or assumptions. But I'd like to share some results. So this is District 3, Amphi Plaza, Fort Lowell and First Avenue. Once a vibrant commercial plaza, lots of retail there, is now urban decay. And this is a heavily populated traffic. There's a large traffic count in through this intersection. This is the second slide on the Amphi Plaza. It is completely vacant, boarded up. Again, this is in District 3. This is 3550 North Oracle. This used to be where the old Apollo College was. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, on Prince and Oracle. Also, I think this property is like 50,000 square feet. It has some tenants on the east side of it, but it's primarily vacant. And this is a major intersection in town. Again, not a lot of activity there. Fort Lowell and Dodge. This used to be a very prominent furniture district on Fort Lowell. As you can see, again, completely vacant nowadays. And this is just one. There's actually several buildings, but I didn't want to do the same street over and over. But it's vacant. It's decaying. It's being abandoned. And of course, the infamous Grant and Alvernon intersection. This is the Northgate Plaza, which also very high traffic count, and it is vacant. You have the Walmart there, and recently Wells made a move there, but it's mostly vacant. And these are other smaller areas. This Flowing Wells and Allegheny. It doesn't look like there's economic progress or there's vibrancy or there's progress. It looks decaying. And this is, and these are just a handful of pictures from a lot. There's a lot. This is just to illustrate what's happening in Pima County, specifically in District 3. And again, this didn't happen yesterday. This is not because of COVID-19. In fact, a lot of these plazas, like the Amphi Plaza, were once very prominent retail locations in town. So you can't really blame it on recessions or anything. This is a result of 24 years of work. And this brings me to probably what is the biggest problem in Pima County. And having worked at the city of Tucson in economic development and trying to stimulate the economy, get it going, you begin to peel the onion and try to understand why is it that we don't grow? Why is it that we don't have economic prosperity? And what is the biggest problem? And as many of you know, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, it's poverty. Poverty is the biggest problem in Pima County. There is no questions asked about that. That is our number one problem. And as you all know, poverty brings with it many more problems, which I'll get into shortly. So let me give you a few stats here. So The poverty rate for the Tucson Metropolitan Statistical Area, or MSA, is 17.8%. Now, I'm using MSA numbers so we could compare to other MSAs of similar size in the western part of the U.S. Comparing it with counties. First of all, most people don't know what county Austin is in, so we're just going to compare it with MSAs. Now, this data is pulled from the MapAZ Eller College website. So this is all data from Dr. Hammond and his team, who do a fantastic job illustrating this. So I'm taking the information from that website to illustrate a few things. So our poverty rate in the Tucson MSA is 17.8%, which is really sad that we are 11 out of 12 Western MSAs, only El Paso having a higher poverty level than we are. Cities like Albuquerque, Phoenix, Las Vegas, Austin, Colorado Springs have much, much lower poverty rates than we do. And we have similar populations, similar industries. They're similar comparisons. And I think it's completely unacceptable that we are 11 out of 12. And again, this didn't happen overnight. This has been work of decade over decade. It's just piled up. The most distressing statistic for me is that the population the poverty rate for the population of under 18 is 25%. So that means that 1 in 4 kiddos out there lives at or below the poverty rate, which being a father of 2, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, it's just heartbreaking, and we need to do something about it. We cannot afford to have our community having 1 out of every 4 kids live in poverty. And again, these numbers are before the COVID-19 pandemic, which I hate to say this, it's going to make these numbers even worse. Again, poverty completely correlated to the median household income. So the median household income in the Tucson MSA is $51,000 a year, which ranks us 11 out of 12 in the Western MSAs. The average in the U.S. median household income is $60,000 a year. So we're well below that. We're even well below Phoenix, our neighbor city just 100 miles north. So we lag there in household income. Now, just to put it in perspective, the household income is measured in the amount of people living in a single household. So being generous, we can say that 2 people live in a household. That puts the average wage in that household at $25,500 apiece. Now, if there's 3 people living in that household, that means, I mean, do the math, that's less than $20,000 a year. You have 4 people, so not all households have 2 people. A lot of them, specifically a lot of Hispanic families, there's more than 2 or 3 people who work living in those households. So these numbers, if you really analyze them, they're really bad, and it is a direct correlation with poverty. We need to move that household income up. That's the only way we're going to get out of poverty, and that leads us to the infamous poverty trap. And I think we are stuck in that here in Pima County. You have a low level of education and healthcare, low levels of human capital, low productivity, low income, and so on and so forth. Low economic growth, low income, low saving, low income. I mean, this is a cycle here. It's a vicious cycle, and it's incredibly difficult for families to break out of, and it just goes generation after generation, and unfortunately, it's a vice that is very prominent, a vicious cycle that's very prominent in our community. And again, this didn't happen overnight. You can't blame this on a recession, and you can't blame this on COVID-19, and you can't blame it on the dollar weakening, or this is a result of a long time happening and not being addressed. So, solution. I've always been told you don't bring a problem to the table without a solution. Well, I'm running for office because I think there is a solution. Again, having worked in economic development, there are solutions to this. There's no magic wand and there's no silver bullet. There's not a turn on the switch and things are going to get better. It's a multitude of things, a different multiple approach to solving this. So let me share this with you. This is what I want to do. And we start with quality early childhood education. So only 40% of 3 to 4-year-olds are enrolled in an early education program. So that means that 6 out of 10 kids aren't. So by the time they get to kindergarten, they're already behind, which means that probably by the time they get to the 3rd grade, they're not reading at 3rd grade level. They're also behind. And I hate the statistic, but it's true. From what I understand, prison capacity is planned based on 3rd grade reading scores. So having 2 sisters who are educators, they've been telling me this since I can remember. It's all about quality early childhood education. We need to train the kiddos. We need to start giving them the proper tools before they even get to kindergarten. And we're not doing it. The state's not doing it. The cities are not doing it. So by God, the county's going to do it if I get elected. We're going to fund this, and we're going to send our youngest ones to school to get the proper tools. And I'm not talking about daycare. I'm talking about county-funded quality early childhood education. We can't keep passing the ball on. Well, it's the state's responsibility or the school district's responsibility. It is our responsibility because it is our community. So if we live here, it is our responsibility, and we need to ensure our kids' future and our economic future for generations to come. And of course, I am a firm believer, if the county does it, if the county takes the first step, if they are the leader, other jurisdictions will follow, and money will flow from different organizations. I can guarantee you nobody's going to want to be left behind with this program. The other approach is workforce development. We're only as good as our workforce. I had the opportunity to work with site selectors from all across the country when I was with the city of Tucson. Site selectors, for those of you who don't know, they're like brokers hired by large corporations to go look for places where a company can grow, set up shop, expand manufacturing, etc. And these site selectors, I would meet with them, and the number one priority, the number one thing they were looking for is workforce, a qualified workforce. It's not taxes. It's not tax incentives. It's not the sun. 350 days of sunshine, which does help. But the reality is they're looking for quality, for talent, for a workforce where they can have access to people to do the things that their company is doing. So what do we do with that? So the county already has Pima County 1 stuff. We got to double down on that one. We got to put more money, more resources into training anybody who wants to be trained or wants to grow. Again, a lot of the individuals in the community don't have the skills that are being required for a lot of manufacturing, for a lot of service jobs. And if they want, if somebody has the will or desire to better themselves, we should be able to have something out there that will get them the right skill set to be able to be a productive member in their household and increase their income and break that cycle or take it to the next level. I mean, we have Pima Community College, we have university, we have two of the best institutions in the country, for lack of a better word, right here in Tucson, and we can leverage that. We can work with them to provide a very tailored approach to the different types of skills that are on demand, and we can push our workforce, make it easy for them to get those skills. So it's incredibly important that we train our workforce to make us as a community, as a county, much more attractive. And then lastly, we need to train our workforce for the jobs of the future. The automation, artificial intelligence is changing the way things are happening. And believe me, I just came from 1 year at an autonomous trucking company, and it's happening. This is an autonomous truck. It drives by itself. That doesn't mean it's going to put truck drivers, it's going to leave truck drivers without a job. By no means. We're 50 years away from that. But the truck driver of the future needs to be trained on how to program a server, or at least troubleshoot a server. What does a camera system do? What is LiDAR? What is radar? The different jobs, everything from machining to all the different jobs out there have evolved and will continue to be evolved as our technology gets better. So we need to many times retrain our truck drivers. And and just on a side note, Pima Community College is doing a fantastic job. They're working with TuSimple to provide an autonomous trucking company, an autonomous trucking course. It's called AI 101, where they're training CDL drivers, which is commercial driver's license drivers, to drive one of these, to understand what the technology. You know, the truck driver of the past needed to know how to change, well, you know, check the oil, change a tire, you know, and now the truck driver of the future is going to need to know how to mount a camera, troubleshoot a sensor, etc. So all of this is part of workforce development. And then economic development. That was my bread and butter at the city of Tucson. That picture is when Caterpillar announced that they were coming to Tucson. That was a big day for the community. But there's other things that we can do that are currently, as an economic development specialist, I would get phone calls every single day or emails. We need to streamline business services. You know, we need to make it easier for companies. If they choose to come and invest in our community, the least we can do is help them, you know, open shop and not have all this red tape and make them, you know, run in circles and, you know, you forgot this, and you know, we need to do a streamlined business service approach, and that leads to customer service focus approach. As a business owner, once upon a time that I opened up a restaurant, believe me, it could be like pulling teeth getting a permit. And the people aren't necessarily that nice. And I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. Those people are probably already retired, but there's still a few out there who don't smile. I mean, we are the customer. In government, the constituents, the business owners, we are the customer. And you know, I would very much like for a county official, when you show up to their counter, to have a big smile and say, "How can I help you?" And you talk to them, and they don't talk to you in, you know, even at working in the city, I would talk to, in many cases, like development service people. I wouldn't understand the word they're saying. They're too technical. Most people don't know the lingo. You know, zonings, explain to me what is the zoning and what can I do, and you know, and with a smile and a can-do attitude, which I think is missing in a lot of instances. And this is from somebody who's been on both ends of the desk as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, and working there. And I've seen colleagues who are just, you know, but that can be changed. It just requires a little push and some training. Regional collaboration. It's important that we collaborate with the entire region. I've heard stories, you know, that the county won't work with the city, and the city won't work with the county, and the county won't work with Marin and Sahuarita, and you know, there's all these bickerings, and you know, at the end of the day, we all live here. We all have to, you know, work together to make this increase the quality of life, increase the competitiveness of our region. So, you know, I have no ill will with anybody, no government official. I really want to work with everybody in Pima County, whether they are from unincorporated areas to the city of Tucson to small towns. It's imperative that we have open communication and we're all on the same page and try to put our differences aside, for heaven's sakes. Also engage the business community. You know, if you're a business owner, when was the last time your elected official came up to you and said, "How can I help you?" You know, it's important to be out there and just take the pulse of the community. What are the issues? Not just hear it on a memo or from, you know, your local chamber of commerce, but it's important to be out there and have them share that experience with you. And that's not how things get done around here. You need to talk to the individuals. Lastly, we need to modernize how we do business. I mean, if somebody Googles right now Pima County to do business here, wow, it's like going back in time. I mean, we have an archaic system of doing business. We need to modernize it. If we're going to compete in the third decade of the 21st century, we have to look like it. We have to act like it. We need to have the tools for organizations across the country, across the world. I mean, it's a global economy, that they can get information in the tip of their fingertips just by going into our websites and getting the information that's needed. And unfortunately, and it's not just websites, it's everything. There's slow processes, permitting, you know, all of these things are like if we're operating in 1970s. You know, almost you need to have a punch card for things. So no, we need to bring that forward. And the reason a lot of these things don't change, it's not because they don't want to, or the people who are there don't want to. It's because they're not involved in it. If you're not a business owner, you don't need to go into a certain site and go through the permitting process. So if I'm an elected official, I don't have to go there. So I never see it. I hear it, maybe third hand and like, I've heard that before. But it's the people who are using it that say, hey, we got to fix it. I'm using it. I see where all the deficiencies are. So let's look the part. Let's act the part. Let's be a modern Pima County. And then lastly, these are topics that are very near and dear to my heart. Protecting the immigrant community for me is a priority. There's all too many stories of how people are afraid to call 911 in cases of domestic violence, or somebody's breaking into their homes. They feel unsafe because they feel that the officer who shows up may ask for an identification, and then they'll be deported because they won't be able to provide the necessary identification. There's a ton of moms out there, and dads and kids who go to bed at night wondering if their spouse is going to come back from working, because they could very well get stopped, pulled over, and not have the right identification, or have the wrong accent, and be put into ICE custody. So I mean, that is completely unacceptable. If you're a resident of Pima County, you should be able to sleep well at night and know that you are safe. You're not going to get deported. That's not what we do here. We need to make sure that tranquility, that everybody feels comfortable. If somebody's having an issue at home, they're able to call the police, and the police will address the police will address the issue for which they call, not get into anything else. We need to do that, and I will fight every day for that one. And a lot of it is working with the sheriff's department. There needs to be that open dialogue, and knowing that you're watching, and that you'll work with them on this. It's important to have that open communication. And as a Spanish speaker, can also talk to people that are the victims or in that demographic. And they'll tell you straight out how it is. So it's important to have the full story and work with them. And if elected, I will lead the charge on the county side to repeal SB 1070. Just last month, SB 1070, it was 10 years since it was signed by then Governor Brewer, which is unacceptable. It was unacceptable then, it's unacceptable now. And I haven't seen much of our county officials stepping up to the plate and say, you guys got to get rid of this. And I will be that voice. I think it's time. We've moved on from that. It's a different world. And it's not like it was right then. It's still horrible. So we need to have elected officials who are willing to stand up and say, enough is enough. Let's get rid of this. Let's work with our state legislatures and give it the push it needs. Changing into taking care of our most vulnerable. Our elders, our elderly in the community are a big portion of our community. As a son of elderly parents, like I mentioned, my dad's 81, 82, and my mom's 72. I know what it feels like to have older parents, and we need to create a livable community for them. We need to focus on walkability, mobility, parks, social participation. That's really important. A lot of people in a lot of our seniors, need to go out. If our parks are in good shape, and we have social programs in our parks where there's yoga classes or exercising or even card games. There's programs out there. People come out, they're healthier, they get to interact. I think that needs to happen. There are some programs, I'm not saying they don't exist, but we need to, excuse me here, we need to do that more. We need to publicize it. We need to let them know, and that brings to communication and information. There is a ton of resources available in our community. I had the privilege of working with the AARP team at the city of Tucson, which made it part of the AARP network. And we did a lot of research on what AARP requires for a community to be part of the network. And we found out that there's a lot, but we don't publicize it. We don't share that information. I mean, there's a ton of resources, and I'm not going to get to every one, but the point I'm trying to make is we need to do a much better job educating our seniors on what are the resources available for them. And lastly, if we make a livable community for our seniors, everybody benefits, because if it's good for one demographic, it's good for everybody else. So, it's win-win for everybody. So we really need to focus on that. I want to share with you, one of the things I want to do, if it's part of being a new supervisor, if I get elected, is thinking outside the box. And this is an idea I've been playing with. I've read other communities are doing on a different scope, but I would create and fund a program where we regularly take county residents to pharmacies in Nogales, Mexico, to purchase prescription medications they cannot afford here. I mean, Nogales, Mexico is 62 miles south of here. I mean, who says you cannot have a weekly bus on the weekends and take seniors down, or whoever needs? They don't necessarily have to be seniors. People are uninsured from all demographics and walks of life. And you can go down there and purchase your a lot cheaper prescriptions and medications. It's very easy to be done. There's not it's not that expensive. All you need is a bus and a chaperone, who can answer questions. And I can work with the mayor of Nogales, Sonora, who's, by the way, a good friend of mine, to have security arranged and all the logistics. I mean, it'd be a great program. It's things like this that could work, that aren't being tried. But you need to think, I'm not saying this is the best solution. I'm not saying it could even work. I'm not saying it could even be feasible, but we can give it a try. Other communities are doing through the Canadian border. Why can't we do it through the Mexico border? So just putting it out there as things that can be done. So going forward,
Juan?
Yes, sir.
Let me just jump in and say we've got a number of questions for you in the queue. So if you can sort of bring it to a point in the next minute or so, we can get to those questions.
Okay, give me 2 minutes and we'll go from there. So going forward, we're as I mentioned, the economic crisis is going to hit us hard. It's going to leave us in a bad situation. So the type of leadership needed here is going to be paramount. We're going to need leaders who are out there in the community, who participate, who are engaged, who work with business owners, not just the big developers, who talk to people. I'm in a demographic where I have kids in school. I talk to other parents in school, at the parks, another group of parents who I see at the park, and gatherings. We need that. And I think the current supervisor isn't in any of those demographics. And you start getting your information third hand. I get it firsthand, because I'm out there. I'm 39 years old. I'm in a generation where people are in their best and working years, and they talk to you. Hey, my real estate job is horrible, or I'm doing fantastic here, or there's opportunities here, or my kids are having issues with this. You hear it firsthand because you are in the mix. Pima County has the largest border with Mexico. I speak Spanish. I can go across the border as many times. I go for business, heaven's sakes. I can go talk to community leaders and see how we can better these situations. So it's very important to have a leader out there who is going to be hands-on with every single demographic and community member, and including our tribal nations. I think they are completely underserved, and we need to work with them. Let me close with this. We run the risk of losing the District 3 seat. These are the numbers. Obviously, I'm in a campaign, so I've been pulling numbers left and right, of Sharon Bronson versus a Republican candidate. Since 2008, which she had a great election that year, she's lost 50% every single year. So between 2008 and 2012, she lost 52% of the votes. And I don't know why my other 50% didn't show up, but between 2012 and 2016, that's another 50% that she's been losing. And the numbers in those in District 3, the total number of votes keeps going up year after year. So this means that I've lost my train of thought, that independents are not voting for the Democratic ticket because, as I mentioned, the numbers keep going up, but the margin of winning keeps shrinking by 50%. So 2020 is going to be rough if we don't change the candidate there. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
All right, thanks very much. We've got a question here. The Arizona House and Senate, with its GOP majority, and Governor Ducey have deliberately starved our education system for years. And this was compounded by the 2008 election. How is this Sharon Bronson's fault? And what should she have done differently? And what will you do differently to fund education?
Well, it is certainly not Sharon Bronson's fault, and that's not what I said or meant. What she didn't do is grab the bulls by the horn and have the county fund this. Because if the state won't fund it, well, the county needs to fund it. So what would I have done differently is, okay, we're going to take, $5-10 million and we're going to jumpstart this program because the state's not doing it. And I'm not of the philosophy that, well, if they don't do it, it's not my job. It is I live here, it is our job. So yes, we need to fund it. They should have funded it a long time ago. They haven't because it's the state's responsibility, but I don't buy that. We need to do it, and I will do it.
All right. A question about the gun show out at the Pima County Fairgrounds. Right now, there are a lot of unlicensed dealers who do not do any background checks at all. So AR-15s are being put into the community without any records. What would you do to bring background checks to the Pima County Fairgrounds?
Well, that's a simple. I mean, I'm completely for bringing the background checks. We can just make it a condition of having participate in the gun show. That's Pima County property. So the board reserves the right to say who can and cannot go into that show. So it's as simple as making it. You want to sell guns there, you do background checks. You don't do background checks, you're not welcome. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Right. Question about the modern streetcar. Do you have any thoughts about expanding the streetcar line to go to the airport?
Well, that's a city project, but should or shouldn't the county be involved? Well, I think it'd be a great thing for our airport. It's underserved and it needs, and transportation is a key part of it. If the city were to decide to go that direction and fund it, I don't see why the county couldn't support the city financially, because the city's part of the county, and if the city does well, the county does well. So absolutely, I think the streetcar has done wonders for the downtown area, and I think it could even do better if expanded. And there's an environmental impact to that that's very attractive as well.
We have a question here. Oh, you know what? We have a question by an anonymous attendee, and I'm not going to ask that. You have to put your name forward, and when you register, and I'm not going to ask any questions from anonymous attendees. A couple of other questions. Are you happy with the road maintenance in Pima County and District 3, and what would you do about it?
No, the answer is no. It's absolutely terrible. But we need to get to work on it. Now, there's limitations on budgets. I get it, but it's focusing on the main arterials to get this going. We got to work with the city, have a more transparent process as to what are the roads that need. I would love to see on a website, these are our worst roads, and this is the order in which they're going to get fixed, and put it out there. People can expect that, okay, Oracle Road between here and here is due to get paved in 2023 for whatever. I mean, that's a horrible number. Maybe 2021. I'd like to say 2021, but at least have that and budget towards those mileposts. Right now, you just hear there's bad roads, which there are. I think we all have a ton of anecdotes of, hitting a pothole, but let's identify them street by street and have a plan to fix them. Some could be that plan takes a long time, but we have a goal to do that, and maybe we can work together with the other communities to expedite a lot of these things with the RTA. So yeah.
All right. I want to encourage everybody to click the Q&A screen of the Q&A icon and ask your questions. An attendee wants to know, you mentioned you have out-of-the-box ideas that you would bring to, reduce poverty and develop the workforce. Give us an example of an idea you have that is out of the box.
Out of the box. Okay. Well, the quality early childhood education, although, it's finding okay. So let's talk about ideas. So you can have as many ideas as you want, and we can, throw the tennis ball at the wall and talk about all these different scenarios. I mean, it's very, very vague question as to what part. Out of the box idea was the medications going to Nogales. But I think where the out of the box idea comes into play is the funding. You can have great ideas, but if you don't have the money, you can't really do it. So it's getting creative as to how do we fund an idea. Do we put a fee in somewhere where it's going to just go directly to that? Is it going to come in the form or fashion of a bond or a property tax? And I'm not a big fan of raising property tax just for the sake of raising property taxes, believe me. But in many cases, there could be instances where there is a public-private partnership where, you go 50-50 on something. So on the poverty side, like I said, it's education. It's getting people back to work, getting them the tools. So for me, thinking out of the box is, you start getting people and seeing what are their skill sets, what do they want to do, and walking them through it. Okay, we'll take you. We'll have a program designed to get you off the street per se and into a job that you feel you can do well and is in need. Not just a low-level job, but you can potentially succeed. So it just depends on what subject we're talking about, whether it's education, whether it is workforce development. There's a ton of entrepreneurs. Startup Tucson does a great job. How can the county be more effective? How can we raise it? When I worked at the city, one of the things I proposed was, there's a lot of foreign startups that we can come incubate here in Pima County. We can get them the visas to do that because that seemed to be the hurdle. So we can go to Mexico City per se, get their 3 or 4 best startups from Startup Mexico and bring them to Pima County where they can flourish and be part of our economy. Those are the things we need to work on. That's thinking outside of the box.
All right, got a couple questions that are pouring in now. If you are elected, what will your staff look like?
Well, it'll definitely be diverse. I will have to say my staff, they all need to speak Spanish. We have the largest section of border with Mexico, and I expect every single one of my staff members to be at least be able to have conversational Spanish. And it will be men and women from different walks of life and different political views I want to hear the different aspects of what everybody thinks, and I think having a diverse staff gives me as an employer different points of view on a daily basis.
One of our attendees wants to know, how are you going to pay for all of these ideas that you have when the county is facing budgets due to COVID-19?
So that's a great question. And like I mentioned before, all of these ideas are just ideas if you don't find a way to pay for them. And I have a few things up my sleeve that can be secondary sources of income primary sources of income for different programs. There's a ton of areas, whether it's through a business license, through fees, through different small increments of, if you want to participate in this, you can direct certain funds or streamline certain funds going into the program depending on the size and scope. it's very, there's other programs that may be obsolete that have funds or that can be used for other things. I mean, there's programs out there that have been running for a long time that are no longer maybe hitting the benchmarks that they were once did, or the economy has changed where it's not necessarily needed anymore. And there could be synergies there. There could be, public-private partnerships. That's a big one, and I think it needs to be explored a lot more, where we sit down with the business community and say, hey, this will benefit you directly. We need your help. Let's split the cost on this and go from there. So it's getting creative on just how we do it. There's a lot of entities in this community that have a lot of money. There's a lot of business owners who are dying to get qualified talent. I think if we all get together in the same room, we can find a way to make this happen.
Thank you. Two of our attendees want to know, where do you stand on environmental issues such as encouraging solar, water conservation, and protecting sensitive desert areas?
Oh, that's an absolute. I mean, we live in solar Mecca. We need to do everything we can to capitalize on that. I see I have, like I said, I'm a father of two. I want my children to grow up in this beautiful country, this beautiful county. We are very privileged. We want to keep it beautiful. Fresh air, clean water. There's some things we can do as county government. For example, I was talking to a friend the other day. I see sheriff's officers driving Tahoes in Midtown, pulling people over for speeding. Why are they driving a Tahoe? Why can't they drive a Ford Focus hybrid? I'm sorry, Ford Fusion hybrid. Why do you need a 16-mile-a-gallon Tahoe to do a traffic stop? That's ridiculous. So it's getting efficiencies out there. Why is our fleet not completely hybrid or electrical? I mean, there's obviously I get there's cost involved, but you're still going to buy cars next year. There's things to do. It's there's working with solar, working with the different departments. You can integrate, and it's baby steps. You can integrate all these little efficiencies in sustainable energy into different departments and the way we do business. Eventually, roll it out into the community.
Let me look over the, well, here's an interesting question. Why is your communication in today's program so ageist, meaning discriminating against people for age? It's one thing to say that you're a new generation candidate, but can't you stay focused on the issues rather than attack someone because of their age?
Well, I'm not attacking anybody on their age. I'm attacking the fact that they've been there too long. Those are two differences. Sharon Bronson would have been elected at the age of 18. My presentation would look exactly the same. It's not the age, it's the ideas that are obsolete at this point. Too long in office.
Okay. Another attendee asks, what programs would you eliminate from the county?
That's a tough one to answer right now without, I have not sat down and by no means, I don't have an agenda to come in and axe anything at all. I think any restructuring would happen once I get elected and actually talk to the different departments and get a firsthand analysis of what everybody's doing. It'd be irresponsible on my end to say, oh, I'm going to walk in and cut this and that. That's not happening.
Question here, what is your position on reproductive choice and including women's rights to an abortion?
Oh, completely. I'm pro-choice, and it's completely the women's right. It's their body. That's their choice. I have nothing to say about that other than it's their right. We have to protect that right, and I'm all for protecting it. I would feel awkward saying what a woman should or not be able to do. That's not my call, or government for that matter. It's their fault. It's their body. It's their choice.
All right, another question. Are you willing to look at where the city and county can consolidate services, such as parks and recreation?
Absolutely. There's a ton of things that can be consolidated. Maybe not completely consolidated, but there can be a lot of synergies and efficiencies. Definitely parks, development services. I mean, you have two offices, one across the other to go see plans. So, to review plans. So you go to the city, if you're going to build a restaurant, you got to go to the city, and then, you got to do health department, and that's a different. So no, there's a lot of room for consolidation, which you could probably save millions and millions of dollars, and not only just the savings part, just the efficiency and making things fast. So yes, I'm a big believer in consolidating some departments.
Okay, we've got a few minutes left, so if you want to get your question in, please go ahead and ask it. So we've got an attendee says, I'm a longtime Democratic voter and active participation in democracy means a lot to me. Who was your first presidential campaign that you voted for, and have you always been a registered Democrat?
So the first, so I turned 18 in 1999. So I registered to vote. So my first presidential election was in 2000. I was first registered as a Republican. I'm a convert, and I did vote for Bush that first time. Since then, it's been going downhill on that end, which eventually I ended up choosing to be a Democrat. However, my favorite president, and I've always said it, has been JFK. I've studied him. I'm a big history guy, and I'm a fan of what he was doing at the time. He was passing the torch to a different generation, and I believe it's time for a next generation to take on the torch. I think it's time for a different generation to lead this community into the future. We can't have the same people over and over and over.
All right, Juan, we've almost run out of time and we have run out of questions. So I wondered if you could take a minute to just give us a parting thought for the audience before we end the program.
Parting thoughts are, I just mentioned it, I think by many means, it's time to move forward here in Pima County, and you have the power to do that. It hasn't necessarily been, never, in the past, maybe there haven't been the primary challengers in the Democratic race. There hasn't been a choice, but there is now, and it's time. And as a candidate, I have the skill set, I have the resume, I have the abilities, I have the energy, I have the commitment to bring Pima County, to bring it into the third decade of the 21st century with new vision, new direction, where we can really raise the quality of life for our community. And I'm asking for your support. Please visit my website at votepadres.com. Again, that's votepadres.com. Can't do this alone. I need your support.
All right, thanks very much, Juan. We appreciate your time, and I definitely want to thank the audience for being so engaged and asking good questions.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for appearing on the program. It's great. And with that, we've run out of time, and I appreciate everybody coming. Look forward to seeing you next week. So with that, have a good day.